I don't recognise this criticism myself, but a friend of mine dislikes many of the more popular puzzle games released over the past few years, as these games value both physical and mental skill in equal measure. Often he would see exactly how to solve a puzzle, but would lack the fast fingers needed to enact the plan in his brain. If you're anything like him, you'll probably find Obulis to be an especial pleasure, as it's a game that focuses almost entirely on the thinking aspect of puzzle solving. But even if you aren't like him, Obulis is an especial pleasure because it's an absolutely fantastic little puzzle game. It's a pretty unique game too. The goal of each level is to get all the balls of a particular colour into their correspondingly coloured jar. You do this by severing the chains holding the balls in place, which is done simply by clicking on them. With a few clicks, a bit of good timing, and a lot of thought, you can create glorious chain reactions that send balls flying all over your screen, crashing into each other, ricocheting and bouncing into their jars. It's quite a bit like shooting pool trick shots with your mind. Some balls will only have one chain suspending them, but many will have two. Cutting a ball's only chain will cause it to drop straight down, while on a multiple chain ball, cutting the chain connecting to the left side of the ball will cause the ball to swing to the right, and vice versa, allowing you to create momentum before severing that second chain, which will cause the ball to shoot off in a particular direction. Through this very simple concept, and a few other ideas that were introduced over the course of the game's 150-ish levels, you'll face some fiendishly tricky puzzles. Naturally, you're eased into the game gradually, but never to the extent that you feel like you're ahead of the difficulty curve. It's very well balanced and very polished. Progression through the game is done by completing levels in sequence, but at certain points the level path branches out, giving you access to several levels at once. The overall game is also split into 3 chapters, and you can access these chapters at any time and play them concurrently, so Obulis is definitely not a game where your progress is hindered by being stuck on any one level, most of the time. If you've watched my reviews in the past, you know that I really like talking about every aspect of gameplay, but I really have told you pretty much everything about the moment-to-moment gameplay of Obulis. You click on chains to break them at the right times. That's the whole game. A few other elements are introduced as you progress, like cannons and catapults that will launch your balls through the air, but these are all just variations on a theme. It's a very pure game, and it's very simple, but don't let that put you off. Obulis levels are an absolute pleasure to play. The design is perfect. Every single level is fantastic, offering a new kind of puzzle, whether it's teaching you to use momentum in a new way, or knocking an idea you've already learnt up a notch. Each and every level in the game is extremely satisfying, even the easier levels, and it's so unlike everything out there that there's also a strong sense of learning a new skill, and all the accompanying satisfaction that goes with it. Yet at the same time it's intuitive enough that anyone can sit and play it without any real tutorial being necessary. The actual act of playing the game is very simple. A left click on a chain will select it, a right click will cut it. The, let's call it a click box on each chain, is so big that you only need to get into the vague area of it to select and cut it, meaning the game is still easy to play even when you're expected to react quickly to what's happening on the screen. There are something like 150 levels in the game, ranging from simple to super difficult. Each level has a reward associated with it in the form of stars, and completing a level adds those stars to your total star pool, which is how you'll judge your overall progression through the game. You'll also find instances where completing certain levels results in you collecting items that will unlock special levels in the chapters. Interestingly, the difficulty curve isn't really a curve at all. That is to say, although the game does generally get progressively harder, it will often throw large groups of easier levels at you too. With so many levels in the game, this is something they can easily get away with, and after spending 10 minutes scratching your head over a 4-star level, it's cathartic to have a couple of easier levels to play with. It's very good design. I completely loathe achievements, but I've actually found them quite useful in Obulis. You earn achievements for completing the most difficult levels in the game, and the fact that they're used sparingly and for actually achieving something makes completing those harder levels especially satisfying. And looking at the Steam stats page, the achievements show that a whopping 8% of players have completed every star in the game. That may sound low, but finishing every level is no mean feat in a puzzle game, and most games have much lower completion statistics. The impression I'm getting from the stats is that Obulis really appeals to its intended audience, and I've felt that reflected through my own experience with the game. Visually, the game is a treat. Although simple and 2D, there's an elegance to the art style, and there's just enough motion in elements of the back and foregrounds to be interesting without being distracting. And with a broad range of visual themes, it's definitely not a game that's boring to look at. But one problem I do have is that there's no colourblind mode, which is unfortunate for a game based around colours. I can see colours fine myself, so I don't know exactly how much of a problem this might be, but it does seem like something that would be an obvious problem. The music is equally attractive, with a broad range of elegant, relaxing orchestral pieces that reflect the visual theme of each level. And some levels will even forego music in favour of ambient sounds like a gushing waterfall. There's very little in the way of sound effects, but they do a good job. The physics is pretty much perfect. If you've ever played a game with physics, you'll know that things inevitably go wrong here and there. I haven't experienced any problems at all with Obulis, but this actually leads to a minor complaint about the game. It's possible to do absolutely everything right to, you might say, complete the level, but because you were a millimetre off and the physics responded appropriately, you end up failing the level. While it's fair to say that this is your fault for not quite doing it properly, it feels like you've been cheated. But this is only a minor complaint. It's actually the only time the game ever becomes frustrating, but that actually is impressive given that you can easily try a level 30 times before you get it right without ever becoming annoyed. It's just that kind of game. Really, I just can't praise this game enough. It's fun, satisfying, rewarding, challenging, and has a meaningful novelty. It's going to last you up to around 7 to 10 hours if you plan to complete every level, and it costs mere pocket change. There are a couple of niggling problems, but overall it's essential if you're a fan of puzzle games, and I'd strongly recommend you check it out, even if you aren't.